This book contains names and stories of First Nations people who have passed on. At times, it also covers issues of a sensitive and traumatic nature. These are voluntarily shared by First Nations AA members active in recovery from alcoholism, using the 12 steps of AA and supporting others to do the same.
Yeah, my name is Liz. I'm an alcoholic. I was born in the late 1940s and grew up in a southwest Queensland town in Australia. My mother was a Murri woman, and she came from Woolomaringal Aboriginal Reserve. She actually came from Dinnerwin Reserve, and they got moved over to Woolomaringal. She was semi-traditional, spoke English, but not very well, but also spoke traditional language. I grew up on the banks of the Wallam Creek in a tin humpy, living on the outskirts of a small country town with my parents, 2 sisters, and a brother. I picked up a drink when I was 18 and was always I always drank to get drunk. Once I started drinking, I couldn't stop. There was a lot of violence during my drinking, but I was also lucky I didn't wind up in jail, even though even though I was classed as an Aboriginal person. I wasn't recognised as an Australian citizen. I received equal pay in the shearing shed because I worked in the shearing shed, and thanks to the Australian Workers Union. My rock bottom came about when I saw the sorrow and compassion in my late wife's eyes, my first wife. She didn't know what to do, and there was fear in my children's eyes when I was drinking. I didn't want to live that way, and I knew that I could do better than that. I sought medical help and ended up in St. John of God's, North Richmond. I was introduced to AA meetings and found some people I used to drink with in Sydney. It was sober, and so the seeds of hope were sown and were planted. It was difficult to be surrounded by people who were interested in my welfare and offered their hands in friendship. This inspired me to stay off the drinks. And I just wanted to do what they were doing, because I realised, how can I do what I don't know except do what these people were doing, because it could have helped them stay sober. I was supported, and the compassion of my new friends, and the AA program gave me the inner strength to survive the death of my first wife in a car accident on the way back from my mother's funeral. I lost my sister a couple of weeks later. I found myself in uncharted water. My wife was very visual in parenting and the household and management, and it was new to sobriety because I couldn't do anything. I think I was never a parent or a father or a husband, as a matter of fact, and depended on the members of Alcoholics Anonymous to steer me in the right directions in this new era of my life. I was terrified that I would drink again, and particularly because of my 2 daughters and my eldest son, who now depended on me. I stuck close to the Aboriginal members in the AA and learned a lot from the older sober members. I did things they suggested: get a home group, a sponsor, trust God to clean house up others, and this was always mentioned in the meeting. Because I was so fearful, I sought professional counselling for my grief. My children were grief-stricken, and I had semi-retired in order to take care of them. My eldest son was the age of 17, grew up very quickly at this time. It was a great help with his sister, enabling me to get to AA meetings, and that I needed. And sometimes the meetings in Sydney would carry on until the early hour of the morning. My my son was renowned for his graffiti. Was a graffiti. He was a graffiti. He used to do graffiti on the walls and trains and stuff like that. But doing beautiful artwork. But I was also sadly, but it was sadly that also losing him from a brain tumor when he was just 23 years old. So I lost him in 1996. When I was nearly 3 years sober, Redfern, Coffs Harbour, Lardrews, Bennelong Haven, Campbelltown and Newtown set up a crewing meetings in Redfern, and this meetings we set up in other groups in Campbelltown and St Mary's, which I run. I heard about the 12 steps that were adopted to need the Native American people, and the success rate of 80% of those people adapted the steps and offered the similar program in North St Mary's Neighbourhood Centre for the Koori group. And I thought this would benefit the AA as a whole. But it was just a trial thing. It wasn't, but I made sure it wasn't, but it was similar to the 12 steps that the Native American people were doing. I thought, if that worked for those people, that would work for our people too. During this time, I met my second wife, who at the time worked in the field of drug and alcohol. We got married and moved to Ipswich in Queensland, which with my two daughters, and we had my second son there, and my sobriety baby, who is now 28 years old. I worked in the advanced Aboriginal Elders and Descendants Corporation, which set up where the land was held back from our people and the descendants from the Aboriginal residents of the mission, including my father over the years. I worked in correctional centres and worked in as a cultural advisor and a counsellor with the communities in community health and schools. During my sobriety, I had to deal with issues which were related to alcoholism, but to do with problems that related to, but were related in my life, which included gambling and anger management. These issues affected my relationship, even when I was sober. So I was 2 years. I had to get. I started gambling. I found another fieldwood, and I was doing that for a couple of years. Particularly to my family, this had been a difficult part of my recovery, to confront and take responsibilities for my own actions and harm that I continued to cause other people, even when I was sober, and it was a difficult time with an ongoing life lessons I sought through Gamblers Anonymous for gambling, and sought outside help through counselling and men's group for anger management and violence. Because I could still go off the air because and I had to. I needed professional help outside of Alcoholics Anonymous, because if you would, they didn't want to be angry around my kids and carrying on like a lunatic, and this assisted me to change my behaviour. I know the 12 steps of the AA program assisted me with most aspects of my life, including raising self-awareness, and that there is a problem, and taking responsibility. But sometimes I had to seek professional help as well. we don't become perfect when we become sober, but we need to admit our wrongs and seeking help from God, the fellowship, and other people in order to change. I had to do this for myself. After my eldest son passed away, died in 1996, I had my first heart attack and had 3 more since, and my second wife and I moved back to Sydney and separated and divorced. Despite the rocky times with my ex-wife, I shared the upbringing of our son. And in 1917, my children and my ex-wife assisted me recover from the triple bypass surgery. And it was only through God's grace and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous working in my life that I've been able to value the power and the acceptance, forgiveness, and making amends. I have been sober now by the grace of God for 34 years. Well, that's what it's got in the book here, but I'm 37 years sober now, and throughout the drama and the trials of my life, I've stayed sober and continue the membership of Alcoholics Anonymous. I continue to attend AA meeting on a regular basis in all my places. I lived in the western suburbs, in the city, Ipswich, Brisbane, and many other places in Australia. I visited. I sponsor other alcoholics whenever possible, and able to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous to my Aboriginal brothers and sisters, and who still suffer through this insidious disease. I have faced this program, faith in people, faith in God, and firmly believe God didn't get me sober to let me down. No matter what happens in my life, with God Dobson through Alcoholics Anonymous, I wouldn't give my sobriety away for a lousy, rotten drink.